Hello everyone, and welcome to the next live based upon my book Beyond Asanas. And today we're going to be looking at chapter 11 of the book. Chapter 11 is called Ashtavakrasana. Now, those of you who practice yoga or know a little bit about yoga, Ashta is a very popular word, term, or a prefix in yoga and in Sanskrit, and Ashta means 8. So Ashtavakra, Ashtavakra was a sage whose body was bent in 8 different points, and Ashtavakrasana is the asana named after the sage. So here in this chapter, I've only spoken about one story, and that story is basically about Ashtavakra. And I've tried to see what we can learn from the story of Ashtavakra, so that we can even understand why such an important asana is named after him. And there's only one story, like I said, and the story is called Bent Out of Shape. And this story is about, it begins with Ashtavakra's parents. Now, Ashtavakra, his dad was a very, very learned sage. He was a sage of the Vedas, like he was a philosopher, he was a student of the Vedas. And every day, as part of his practice, he would recite the Vedas. He lived with his wife, and they were devoted to each other. And they were expecting their first kid, and that first kid would end up being Ashtavakra. But they didn't know at the time, but Ashtavakra, he was destined to be a great sage. They didn't know that the child that they were going to have was destined to become a great sage. And that he could hear everything, when he was in the womb, which is what kids can do. Fetuses can hear everything in the mother's womb. And when his dad used to recite the Vedas, his dad would make a few mistakes, like he would mispronounce a few of the words. And this would irk Ashtavakra. Even in the womb, he would be listening to the Vedas, and he, every time his dad would mispronounce a word, he would feel really irked and irritated by it. And he one day he couldn't tolerate it anymore, and he told his dad, like, look, you're mispronouncing a few of these words. And his father got really, really angry. Like, how dare this child who's not even born and who doesn't have as much experience as I do, how dare he correct me? And he was in such a rage. He worked himself up into such a temper that he cursed Ashtavakra, and the curse was so poisonous, it was so strong, and it was so lethal that it broke the fetus's body in 8 parts. And that is how Ashtavakra, even when he was born with all these deformities. And when he was born, because of these deformities, he couldn't do even simple things like little sitting or standing. Everything was really physically painful for him. And that's where we get the first lesson of Ashtavakrasana. And the first lesson is that seeing how difficult it was for his child to just live a regular life, to enjoy regular tasks, his father feels really bad that he lost his temper and that he had no control over himself. And he wished so much that he could take the curse back, but he couldn't. A curse once given it cannot be retracted. So Ashtavakra's dad actually had to also live with this proof of having lost his temper, and of how and of the consequences that can happen, and also how parents can sometimes do things that impact their children in negative ways. And so as a parent, we should be very responsible, very conscious of what we're saying, what we're doing, because all our words and our actions and our deeds do impact our children. So Ashtavakra's dad had deformed his child, and he had to live with this guilt forever. Now his mother, on the other hand, she had no part in this, in the curse, and she tried really hard to give Ashtavakra as normal and as happy a life as possible. She couldn't do anything about everybody else. He went to school, the kids in school would make fun of him, and as a result, Ashtavakra became very introverted. He didn't have many friends. He was very lonely. His mom tried to make it better for him, but there's only so much that she could do. But the good thing that came out of this is that Ashtavakra became, he had so much time to study Vedanta and to study the Vedas, and he fulfilled the prophecy of becoming a great sage. So just like his dad, he became a great sage, but he was a sage who was full of optimism, who had like control over his mind, his body, his senses, and he could maintain the sense of optimism despite being broken and so deformed. And eventually he reached such a stage of enlightenment or knowledge that he decided he wanted to pursue more knowledge, and he decided to go to King Janak's court. He had heard that all the wise people in the land, they go to his court, and there are these discussions there, and they create policies, and that it's a very vibrant court. And he had heard that King Janak is a very fair king, and he listens to everybody. So he decides to undertake this journey, and he goes to King Janak's court. And as soon as he enters the court, everybody around him, all the other courtiers, begin to laugh at him. They're like very openly, they point at him and they start to laugh at him. And Ashtavakra, like it took him some time to understand what's going on, but the moment he realized that people were laughing at him and clearly pointing at him and laughing at him, he felt really bad, and his body starts to shake. And he then says that, so everybody's laughing, but King Janak is not laughing. And then King Janak notices that Ashtavakra is laughing. And so he asks Ashtavakra, like, what's wrong? Why are you laughing? And then Ashtavakra says that, I had heard so many things about your court. I had heard that the best and the wisest men, the wisest brains of the land, they come to your court and you have great discussions. But I've come here and I see that you guys are nothing but shoemakers. And King Janak is like, what do you mean shoemakers? And Ashtavakra, that's when he gives him the second lesson of the story. And the second lesson is that you should, just like Ashtavakra says, that a cobbler, a shoemaker, only looks at the outside of the shoe. He judges a shoe by like what the shoe looks like, whether it's made of leather or made of something else. And that's what the people in your court have also done. They've only looked at my external, how I look externally, and they have judged me for it. And King Janak is struck by this, by this kind of metaphor or this comparison that Ashtavakra has, and the way he explains it in such in this very calm and very philosophical way. And Ashtavakra says, see, you thought that I was laughing, but because I was shaking, but I was crying. So appearances can be deceiving. So King Janak realizes that Ashtavakra is someone of uncommon wisdom, and they decide to like have a conversation right there. And the more he like conversed with him, Janak conversed with Ashtavakra, he realized that Ashtavakra is like, he has uncommon intellect and uncommon wisdom. And King Janak decides to become his disciple. So he becomes a student for life. So as in all the other stories, I have the significance and symbolism also. So in this, we've already discussed the significance and the symbolism. The first one is that appearances can be deceiving, especially in today's like world of social media. What you see is not really, the true story. You see a curated version of someone's life, and we tend to judge people by that. Judge ourselves, like most of all, by comparing ourselves to somebody else's curated, filtered reality. So this story and the lesson that we get from it is one that shows us not to do that appearances are always, always deceiving. And another thing this story shows us is perseverance. So Ashtavakra, after he was cursed by his dad, could have just wallowed in self-pity, could have wallowed in sadness, but he chose not to do that. He decided that he would pursue, the Vedas, he would pursue the wisdom that he wanted. And he was he persevered so much that eventually he ended up going to King Janak's court. And not only that, he ended up getting Janak as his disciple. So for yogis and for people, that is a lesson in perseverance. And in the in the little summary for this chapter, what I've said is, like Ashtavakra, yogis should take no notice of discouragement and should make the effort required to stay on the path of yoga. So like Ashtavakra, we should also, endeavor to stay on the path of yoga regardless of what comes our way. because there are a lot of distractions, a lot of disturbances, and a lot of excuses that come our way. So we should try, like Ashtavakra, not to let that bother us. The second summary that I have is, and it comes from the Bhagavad Gita actually, is that the body is cast off like a snake sheds its skin. So it is important to look beyond the outer appearance of people and situations to see the light within. Ashtavakrasana is a reminder that yoga is not merely about the body, but also about the quest of the soul. So again, this asana is also, it is an asana, but it is depicting, it is showing, it symbolizes that yoga is so much more than just a physical pursuit, because here we have a pose named after a sage who probably couldn't even do the pose, so that's chapter 11 of this book. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a message or write to me, and I'm going through every single chapter in this book. So tomorrow I'll be here with chapter 12 of the book. You can please share this video with anyone who's interested. We're trying to look at how the yoga asanas are related to how you do yoga in your everyday life. So what are the lessons that we can get from yoga on the mat, the yoga asanas? What are the lessons for yoga off the mat? So I hope you've enjoyed this little conversation, and I will see you again for the next one. Thank you so much.